Have you ever walked into a room and felt the weight of eyes pressing down on you? Not with admiration, not with warmth, but with silent judgment? The air feels thick, almost electric. You hear no insults, no raised voices, yet something inside you shrinks. A smirk cuts across the room. A whispered remark lingers like smoke. A glance, sharp as glass, slices through your confidence. You were standing tall a moment ago, and now you feel yourself folding inward, questioning your very worth. This is the battlefield no one warns you about. There are no swords drawn, no fists raised. Instead, it is a quiet violence, carried not by weapons, but by presence, by the subtle contempt of toxic people. They don't need to shout. Their silence is loud enough. They don't need to strike. Their smirk is sharper than steel. And in those moments, you feel the temptation rising within you, the urge to defend yourself, to explain, to fight for recognition. But here lies the trap. The Stoics warned us long ago, reacting to provocation is surrendering your power. Every time you answer their mockery, you give them fuel. Every time you argue for your dignity, you place it in their hands. And the more you fight for their recognition, the further you drift from your own. So the question is this: how do you stand tall when someone wants you bent? How do you hold your ground when every glance, every comment is designed to make you small? Imagine this scene again. You walk into that same room. The eyes are still there. The smirk is still there. The air is still heavy. But this time, something has changed. Inside you, there is a quiet strength, a calmness that cannot be moved. You do not rush to explain. You do not flinch. You do not shrink. You stand. You breathe. You hold your silence like a sword and your composure like a shield. And suddenly, the one who sought to diminish you is unsettled. Their weapon has failed because it relies on your reaction, and you gave them none. This is the heart of Stoicism. It is not about winning arguments or silencing enemies with clever words. It is about mastering yourself so deeply that no insult, no smirk, no whisper has the power to dictate your peace. It is about carrying an armor so quiet, so steady, that even in the presence of contempt, you remain whole. Stoicism is not a philosophy locked in dusty books or ancient scrolls. It is a living, breathing practice, a way to navigate modern storms with ancient wisdom. Marcus Aurelius, a Roman emperor, carried it through endless wars and betrayals. Seneca, a statesman, wielded it against public mockery and political attacks. Epictetus, born a slave, built it into a fortress no one could breach. And now, centuries later, their wisdom waits for you, to remind you that power is not in the noise, but in the silence you choose. Because let us be honest, life will not stop sending toxic people your way. You will meet them at work, in your family, among your friends, even in your closest circles. They will come with smiles that hide knives, with jokes that disguise cruelty, with questions that sound innocent but are designed to wound. You cannot escape their existence, but you can learn to meet them differently. You can learn to carry yourself like the mountain that does not bend to the wind, like the fortress that does not lower its gates at the first demand, like the lion that does not roar to prove its strength, because its silence is proof enough. And that is where this journey begins. Not in anger, not in retaliation, but in clarity, in composure, in dignity. Stoicism hands you the tools to build a shield no insult can pierce, a strength no manipulation can shake, a calmness so deep that toxic people are left powerless in your presence. If you have ever walked away from an encounter replaying every word you wished you had said, if you have ever felt your energy drained by people who thrive on your reaction, if you have ever wondered why you feel smaller in the presence of certain faces, then this path is for you. Stoicism is not about changing them, it is about fortifying you. And here's the truth. Once you learn to respect yourself in front of toxic people, you realize their power was never real. It was always an illusion, sustained only by your agreement to play their game. The moment you stop playing, you grow beyond their reach. So as we step into this series of lessons, remember this. Every encounter with a toxic person is not a curse, but an invitation. An invitation to practice restraint. An invitation to prove to yourself that your dignity is not negotiable. An invitation to rise. And if you are ready to take that invitation, If you are ready to build the armor of calm strength and carry the quiet power of stoicism into every room you walk into, then stay with me. Because what lies ahead is not just philosophy, it is survival, it is clarity, it is freedom. If you are searching for this path, walk with us on True Stoic Way, the place where we learn to stand unshaken in the storm. Picture this, a knife wrapped in silk. At first glance it looks harmless, smooth, delicate, even beautiful. You might run your hand across the fabric and feel only softness. Yet beneath that fabric lies a sharp edge, waiting for the moment you relax. That is how toxic people operate. They rarely attack head-on. They rarely scream or strike. Instead, they smile, they flatter, they dress their intentions in politeness and humor. But their aim is not to lift you. It is to cut you, to make you question what you already know to be true about yourself. Their cruelty is subtle, often disguised as charm. A sarcastic compliment about your appearance. A joke that leaves the room laughing while you are left bleeding inside. A smirk that says more than 100 words could. And perhaps the most insidious part is this. They act as if you are overreacting when you feel the sting. Relax, they'll say. It was just a joke. But you know it wasn't. You felt the blade beneath the silk. The Stoics understood this kind of quiet violence better than anyone. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, the wrongdoer wrongs himself. In other words, when someone mocks, deceives, or belittles, they damage their own character long before they touch yours. Seneca warned that anger consumes the one who carries it, not the one it is directed at. And Epictetus taught that if you hand over your peace to another, you have surrendered your freedom. Toxic people thrive precisely on this exchange, on you surrendering calm for chaos, dignity for reaction. I remember a moment years ago when a colleague made a sly remark during a team meeting. It wasn't loud, it wasn't blatant, but it was sharp enough to draw laughter from others in the room. The old version of me would have rushed to defend myself, piling up arguments, trying to prove that I was right, capable, worthy of respect. But that day, something in me shifted. I paused. I let the silence hang in the air. I met his eyes, not with anger, not with defense, but with composure. My calm unsettled him more than any comeback could have. His smirk faltered, the laughter faded, and suddenly the room could see what he couldn't hide. His pettiness. That was the lesson. Toxic people do not need your words. They crave them. They want you to argue, to shout, to burn yourself out in a desperate attempt to correct their illusion. Because the moment you react, you step onto their stage, and they control the script. They push your buttons, not because they care about truth, but because your reaction gives them power. Think of it like fire. A flame burns only when it finds fuel. Without wood, it collapses into ash. Toxicity is the same. It feeds on your anger, your explanations, your desperate need to be understood. Without those, it dies. Your silence becomes a shield, your restraint, a quiet sword. But let's be honest, this is not easy. Every nerve inside you wants to shout back, to explain, to prove your worth. The heart races, the palms sweat, the mind screams, don't let them get away with this. Yet the Stoic path calls you to something higher, to stand not with fists or fury, but with composure. Because in that composure lies the most terrifying truth for the toxic. Their power is an illusion. Toxic people often wear masks of authority. It could be a boss who knows how to cut you down in front of others, a parent who turns every choice you make into a courtroom trial, a friend who cloaks cruelty in laughter. They prod, they test, they invade. But boundaries are not built in rage, they are built in clarity. To say calmly, without shouting, "This is the line. You will not cross it." That is not cruelty. That is self-respect. I recall another moment, sitting across from a relative who never missed a chance to criticize me. In the past, I would have defended myself endlessly, trying to win their approval. But one day, I stopped. I looked them in the eye, steady, and simply said, "That's my decision." No explanations, no apologies. The conversation ended right there. What I gained in that silence was worth more than their approval. It was my peace. And here lies the key. Toxic people are not nearly as powerful as they appear. Their strength exists only in proportion to your willingness to react. They set the trap, but you decide whether to step into it. They throw the bait, but you decide whether to bite. Once you recognize this, you begin to see their behavior for what it truly is. A performance designed to extract your energy. Ask yourself, how many hours of your life have been wasted explaining yourself to people determined not to understand? How much energy have you poured into defending your worth to those who only gain when you doubt yourself? Every moment spent in that battle is a moment stolen from your own growth. Seneca reminded us, life is short and your time is not infinite. Spend it where it builds, not where it bleeds. That is the nature of toxic people. They are not monsters with limitless power. They are actors waiting for an audience. Without your reaction, they stand on an empty stage. Without your approval, their words echo into silence. Without your anger, their smirk collapses into nothing. So the next time you encounter that smirk, that sly remark, that cutting glance, pause. Breathe. Remember, you do not owe them your reaction. You do not owe them your peace. Respecting yourself in their presence is not about defeating them. It is about refusing to betray yourself. And this is where the Stoic journey begins. Not by reforming them, not by convincing them, but by standing so firmly in your own dignity that their words fall flat. When you carry yourself with calm and boundaries, you send a message louder than any argument. I will not shrink for you. This is the first step on the Stoic path. If you find value in these truths, continue walking with us, because what comes next will strengthen your armor even more. Stay with True Stoic Way. Imagine a fortress wall, ancient, unshaken, built of stone that has stood for centuries. Storms have slammed against it, waves have broken at its base, armies have tried to breach it, yet it remains. That is what calmness is meant to be. A fortress wall protecting your dignity from every assault, every insult, every provocation. The storm may rage outside, but the wall does not move. This is the essence of calm strength. It is not weakness. It is not passivity. It is mastery. The ability to remain unmoved while chaos screams for your attention. The Stoics knew that the greatest battles are never fought with fists or swords, but within the mind. To keep one's composure in the face of attack is to win twice. Once over the aggressor, and once over yourself. Seneca captured this truth when he wrote, "The greatest remedy for anger is delay." Those words may sound simple, but their power is immense. Delay is not surrender, it is command. It is the act of pausing when every nerve in your body wants to explode. It is the discipline of waiting until the fire burns itself out, leaving you in control rather than consumed. Anyone can shout when provoked. Anyone can hurl insults in anger. But only the disciplined can pause, breathe, and remain still. I remember standing in a meeting years ago, surrounded by colleagues and superiors. Out of nowhere, my work was questioned, not with curiosity, but with mockery. The superior's tone was sharp, designed to humiliate, not to correct. The room grew quiet. All eyes turned toward me, waiting for the clash. My body trembled with the urge to defend myself, to raise my voice, to prove my worth. But in that moment, I remembered Seneca's wisdom. Delay. I took a slow breath. I let the silence hang for just a few seconds longer than felt comfortable. And when I finally spoke, it was not with anger, but with calm clarity. No raised voice, no desperate explanation, just steady words. The shift in the room was immediate. My composure unsettled my accuser. His words rang hollow because they did not provoke the reaction he craved. The others saw it too. Suddenly he looked small, and I looked strong. Not because I destroyed him with arguments, but because I refused to be destroyed. That day I learned this. Calmness unsettles the toxic more than anger ever could. Why is this so powerful? Because toxic people rely on your explosion. They want you rattled, defensive, emotional. They need you to look unbalanced so they can appear justified. When you remain calm, their script collapses. They push harder at first, but the longer you hold steady, the more their own lack of control is revealed. In the end, they are exposed, and you remain untouchable. Calmness is not silence alone. It is measured response. It is choosing words like arrows, few, precise, deliberate, instead of scattering them in haste. Sometimes the strongest answer is no answer at all. Sometimes it is a short, controlled statement. That's your opinion. This conversation is over. I disagree. No shouting, no pleading, just clarity. And when words fail, silence itself can be a weapon. Not the silence of fear, but the silence of discipline. It says, "You do not control me." It says, "My energy is mine, and I will not waste it here." That silence can make a room tremble, because the one who does not need to speak is often the one who already holds the highest ground. Calm strength also protects reputation. In any conflict, outsiders rarely see the full story. What they do see is one person shouting and another standing still. And instinctively, they know where the dignity lies. The calm one appears in control. The angry one appears small, even if they were right. This impression lingers long after the argument fades. But perhaps the greatest gift of calm strength is what it does for you internally. Anger leaves behind residue, regret for words spoken too quickly, shame for reactions you couldn't control. Calmness leaves no residue. When you walk away composed, you walk away clean. Each time you resist the pull of reaction, you fortify your inner fortress. You remind yourself that you are master of your mind, and no one enters without your permission. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." This is the cornerstone of calmness. You cannot control the storm, but you can control the wall. You cannot stop the insult, but you can stop it from breaking through your defenses. Calm strength is not the absence of feeling. It is the mastery of the space between feeling and action. Think of anger like waves crashing against a rock. The sea may roar, but the rock does not move. That is calm strength, enduring the storm without being carried away by it. And with every storm you endure, the rock grows smoother, stronger, more timeless. Ask yourself, what is more powerful, to be provoked into shouting or to be unprovoked altogether? Which leaves you stronger? Which leaves you freer? Every time you choose calmness over chaos, you reclaim a piece of yourself that would have been lost to anger. That is the quiet victory the Stoics spoke of. So the next time someone mocks you, provokes you, tries to unseat you, remember this: their power exists only if you hand it to them. Hold your composure, and you rob them of their weapon. Stay calm, and you become untouchable. This is not weakness. This is strength in its purest form, the fortress wall that cannot be breached. Calmness is the armor that protects your dignity, the shield that guards your peace, the quiet declaration that you will not be ruled by anyone but yourself. If you want to practice this kind of calm strength every day, stay with True Stoic Way. Here we walk together toward a life unshaken by storms. Picture a garden, lush, green, filled with flowers carefully planted and nurtured. Now imagine that garden without a fence. Anyone walking by can step inside. Some may admire it, perhaps even water the plants, but others will trample the soil, pluck the flowers, and leave footprints across the fragile ground. The garden might still bloom, but never in peace. Without boundaries, beauty becomes vulnerable. Your life, your energy, your dignity, they are that garden. Without boundaries, they become open territory for anyone's use. People will walk in uninvited, leaving behind their criticisms, their demands, their careless words. And over time, the space that once belonged to you no longer feels like yours. You feel invaded, drained, and unsure of where you end and where others begin. The Stoics would call this a failure of guard duty. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that his mind was a fortress, and only he could decide who entered. Without vigilance, dignity is eroded one small concession at a time. And here's the truth: boundaries are not walls of bitterness. They are gates of clarity. They don't say, "I hate you." They say, "This is who I am. This is what I allow. This is what I refuse." Toxic people test those gates constantly, not because they must, but because weakness invites intrusion. Seneca warned that yielding once without reason is an invitation to yield again. Every time you let a cutting remark slide, every time you accept a joke at your expense, every time you bend to a demand that violates your peace, you silently teach others how far they can go. I remember a friend who always joked at my expense. At first I laughed it off. It's harmless, I told myself. But the joke sharpened, and soon others joined in. What began as a small laugh had become a habit, a pattern where I was the target, and they were the audience. My silence had painted me as a willing victim. One day I stopped laughing. He made another joke, expecting the same reaction, but I didn't smile. I met his gaze and said calmly but firmly, "That's enough." The room shifted instantly. The laughter died. He tried again another time, but I didn't waver. The boundary, once invisible, was carved into stone. And from that day forward, the jokes lost their power. This is the nature of boundaries. They are not drawn in words alone. Toxic people twist words, mock them, test them, but actions, consistent, calm, unshakable, cannot be denied. Walking away from a disrespectful exchange, refusing to answer manipulative questions, ending a conversation with, "This subject is closed." These acts are stones laid in the wall of your self-respect. Over time, those stones rise into a fortress that no insult can breach. But boundaries are not only for others, they are reminders for yourself. Every time you enforce one, you tell your own heart, "I matter. My peace matters. My dignity matters." That reinforcement is perhaps their greatest strength. Not just teaching others how to treat you, but teaching you how to value yourself. Epictetus, the Stoic slave who became a teacher, warned, "If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid." Why? Because the moment you enforce a boundary, some will call you cold, selfish, arrogant. They will accuse you of changing, of being distant, of becoming too much. Their resistance reveals their true intent. Those who respect you will respect your limits. Those who do not were never for you. Think of a king who leaves the gates of his castle wide open, declaring trust in all who pass. How long before thieves enter? How long before the castle itself crumbles? Trust without boundaries is not virtue, it is negligence. A wise ruler does not close the gates to everyone. He chooses carefully who enters and under what terms. Should we not do the same with the kingdom of our own lives? Of course, boundaries will always be tested. Toxic people search for cracks. They push with small jokes, subtle insults, manipulative requests. If you let one slide, they know they can push further. That is why clarity and consistency matter more than volume. You don't need to shout. You don't need to justify. You only need to hold the line, calmly, firmly, without apology. One of the hardest lessons is this: boundaries will make some people uncomfortable. But their discomfort is theirs, not yours. When someone complains that you've changed, what they really mean is they can no longer use you the way they once did. Let them complain. Let them mock. Their reaction is proof that your fence is working. Remember this: every time you fail to enforce a boundary, you grant someone else authority over your life. Every time you hold it, you reclaim that authority. Boundaries are not about keeping everyone out. They are about protecting what is sacred inside: your peace, your energy, your worth. So when someone tests your limits, pause and ask yourself, do I bend to keep them comfortable, or do I stand to keep myself whole? Choose the latter, always. Because when you stand firm, you send a message stronger than any defense. I value myself too much to let you decide how far you can go. Boundaries are the gates of self-respect. They are not cruelty, they are honesty. They declare, this is how you may treat me, and nothing less. And in that declaration lies freedom. If you understand the value of boundaries, comment the word respect below. Let it be your declaration that your dignity is worth protecting. Imagine standing in a courtroom that never closes. The judge is always seated, the jury never leaves, and the trial never ends. Every choice you make is dragged before them. Your career, your relationships, even the clothes you wear. You are forced to defend, justify, explain, as if your very life belongs to their approval. This is what happens when you explain yourself endlessly to people who are determined not to understand you. At first it feels harmless. Someone asks, "Why did you choose that path?" And you answer politely, Another asks, "Are you sure that's wise?" And you explain again. But slowly, the questions multiply. The tone shifts. It is no longer curiosity. It is cross-examination. And before long, you are trapped in a trial where the verdict is never in your favor. The Stoics warned against this trap. Epictetus gave us a piercing line of defense. "If anyone speaks ill of you, reply he was ignorant of my other faults, else he would not have mentioned these alone." Notice the brilliance here. Epictetus doesn't suggest arguing, correcting, or defending. He suggests irony. He suggests stepping aside from the courtroom altogether. Because the truth is simple. Your worth does not sit in their understanding. Explaining yourself to the wrong people is not clarity. It is surrender. It feels like strength because you are speaking, because you are fighting. But in truth, you are bending. Every word you offer is another brick handed over to the accuser, and they will use those bricks to build a cage around you. I once knew someone who lived this cycle every single day. Every decision she made, what to wear, what to eat, what job to pursue, was presented to friends and family like evidence on trial. And every time she defended herself with long explanations. She thought she was buying peace, but instead she only gave her critics more fuel. They twisted her words, poked holes, dragged her into new rounds of questioning. Over the years, I watched her spirit grow tired. She wasn't exhausted from work or hardship. She was exhausted from constantly trying to be seen through someone else's eyes. She had strength, but she never saw it, because she was too busy seeking permission to use it. This is the danger. Toxic people don't want your answer. They want your effort. They don't need your defense. They need your energy. Each time you explain, you hand them authority over your life. And the more you do it, the more you believe the lie that your choices require their approval. Here is the Stoic alternative. Say less. Use simple, steady words that close doors instead of opening them. That's my choice. It works for me. I'm at peace with it. These are not evasions. They are shields. They refuse to hand over the keys of your life to another's curiosity. Of course, silence is not easy when you are accused, mocked, or misunderstood. Every nerve demands to defend, to clear your name. But Marcus Aurelius reminds us, if you are pained by any external thing, it is not this thing that disturbs you, but your judgment about it. The insult itself is powerless. It is your urge to justify that chains you. Think of a soldier guarding a city. If he opens the gate every time an outsider demands entry, the city will not stand for long. But if he holds the line, calmly, firmly, without apology, the city remains secure. You are that soldier. Your mind is that city. Every unnecessary explanation is a gate swung open. And here's what happens when you stop explaining yourself to toxic people. At first, they push harder. They accuse you of arrogance, selfishness, of being different. Let them. Their noise is the sound of chains breaking. Because once they realize they can no longer bait you into endless defense, they lose one of their sharpest weapons. And for the first time, you taste the strength of living without permission. Respect yourself enough to keep your words where they matter. Do not pour them into deserts where nothing will grow. Give them instead to your goals, your growth, the people who truly cherish your presence. Your voice is not cheap. Do not sell it for scraps of approval. So the next time someone demands an explanation, pause. Ask yourself, is this question born from love or from control? From a desire to understand or a desire to trap? If the answer is the latter, hold your silence, protect your ground, because you owe no courtroom your life. If you've ever found yourself stuck in the endless courtroom of explanations, break free today. And if this lesson speaks to you, hit subscribe so you don't miss the next Stoic teaching here on True Stoic Way. Imagine a house with every door and window left wide open. At first, it feels inviting, even generous. Come in, everyone is welcome. But soon, strangers wander in freely. Some walk gently, admiring the space. Others track mud on the floor, knock over furniture, take whatever they please. The owner feels frustrated, even angry. But whose fault is it? The doors were never closed. The house, once a sanctuary, is now a place of chaos. That house is your life without distance. If you do not guard your time, your energy, your spirit, People will step inside without hesitation. Not all will respect the space. Toxic people, in particular, thrive when you leave the doors open. They don't come to admire your light. They come to burn your firewood. And unless you learn the art of distance, they will keep taking until nothing is left but ash. The Stoics understood that not everyone deserves equal access to your life. Epictetus reminded his students, "If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid." What he meant was simple. When you withdraw from those who drain you, some will accuse you of being cold, distant, or arrogant. But their complaints are not truth, they are tactics. They want access to what they no longer deserve. Distance, therefore, is not cruelty. It is clarity. Cruelty seeks to harm. Distance seeks to protect. Cruelty closes doors out of hatred. Distance closes doors out of wisdom. Saying no is not selfish. It is survival. I once knew a man who could never say no. Every time a manipulative friend called, he answered. Every time a toxic relative demanded, he showed up. By the end of each week, he was drained, bitter, hollow. He thought he was practicing kindness. In reality, he was practicing surrender. His open doors left him robbed of peace. One day he began experimenting with a single word. No. He said it politely, calmly, without guilt. The first time, it shocked people. They protested. They accused him of changing. But he did not bend. Soon those who came only to take drifted elsewhere. And what he found in their absence was something he hadn't felt in years. Peace. That is the art of distance. Learning that not every call must be answered. Not every invitation must be accepted. Not every presence deserves your presence. When you guard your gates, you discover that the people who truly value you will stay, and those who only exploited you will leave. Distance comes in many forms. Sometimes it is physical, walking out of a toxic conversation, leaving a gathering where you feel drained. Sometimes it is emotional, refusing to replay their insults in your head. Sometimes it is digital, muting, unfollowing, or limiting the constant stream of voices that invade your peace. Marcus Aurelius said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." The same is true of distance. You cannot stop toxic people from existing, but you can stop them from camping inside your life. You cannot silence their noise, but you can refuse to let it echo in your mind. Of course, toxic people hate distance. Proximity gives them leverage. The closer they stand, the easier it is to observe your weaknesses, manipulate your emotions, and drain your energy. When you step back, you take away that leverage. You are no longer an open field for their intrusion. You become a guarded fortress. But distance does not always look like escape. Sometimes it means sitting in the same room and still choosing not to engage. Sometimes it means sharing blood with someone and still guarding your spirit. Because closeness by birth does not mean access by right. Distance begins the moment you decide, you may be near me, but you will not rule me. Think of your life as a garden. Some people will water your flowers, others will trample them. If you do not guard the gate, the flowers will not survive. Distance is that gate. It decides who may walk inside and who must remain outside. And here is the paradox. Distance deepens respect. When you say yes to everyone, you cheapen your presence. When you ration it carefully, it gains weight, value, meaning. Toxic people may complain when you step back, but those who truly honor you will understand. So ask yourself, who drains me every time I meet them? Who leaves me exhausted, bitter, or diminished? And who leaves me lighter, stronger, renewed? That question is the beginning of wisdom, because your life is not infinite. Your time is not endless. Guarding it is not selfish, it is sacred. The Stoics were clear. Associate with those who elevate you. Limit those who pull you down. It is not cruelty, it is courage. Distance is one of the most important skills you can ever practice. If you want to learn how to guard your gates and protect your peace, stay with True Stoic Way, where we walk the path of clarity and strength together. Before a single word leaves your lips, the world has already read you. The way you walk into a room, the steadiness of your gaze, the position of your shoulders, these things speak louder than entire speeches. Presence is power without words. It is the unspoken language that tells people whether you respect yourself or whether you are waiting for them to decide your worth. Toxic people, more than anyone, are fluent in this language. They watch for cracks, the nervous laugh, the darting eyes, the slouched shoulders. They sense weakness the way a wolf senses blood. You may say all the right words, but if your presence betrays fear, they will push. Presence is not what you claim. It is what you embody. Marcus Aurelius understood this when he wrote, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." If your thoughts are restless, uncertain, self-doubting, your body will reflect that uncertainty. But if your mind is steady, disciplined, anchored in dignity, your presence will reflect that as well. Calm thoughts dye the soul, and the dyed soul colors the body. I once knew a man who never raised his voice. In fact, he spoke less than most. But whenever he entered a room, people adjusted. They straightened in their seats, lowered their tones, paid attention. Why? It wasn't charisma in the modern sense. It wasn't charm or loudness. It was stillness. He walked slowly, stood tall, met eyes without flinching, and carried himself as if nothing could shake him. When a colleague tried to belittle him in front of others, he didn't scramble for a witty comeback. He simply looked steady, calm, unhurried. And in that silence, the aggressor's words lost their sting. This is the essence of presence. It doesn't roar, it resonates. It doesn't demand respect, it invites it. True presence unsettles toxic people because it cannot be provoked. They thrive on reaction, but when your body gives them none, when your shoulders remain square, your eyes remain clear, your tone remains calm, they are left with nothing to use. Presence is congruence. When your words and your body align, you radiate strength. But when your mouth says, "I'm fine," while your eyes dart nervously, people believe the eyes. When your voice insists on calm but your body curls inward, people believe the posture. Toxic people especially read the body, and they exploit every sign of weakness. Think of the lion. It does not roar at every sound in the savannah. It walks slowly, deliberately, confident in its strength. The world around it adjusts, not because of noise, but because of presence. That is how you must carry yourself, not with constant defense or loud declarations, but with steady assurance that your ground is yours. Presence also lingers. It is not only felt while you are speaking, but long after you leave. I once left a family gathering where a relative had tried to provoke me. I didn't slam doors or raise my voice. I simply stood, nodded, and walked away calmly. Hours later, I heard how unsettled they were. They had expected drama. They had rehearsed their script of chaos, but they received nothing but composure. And that quiet departure echoed louder than any argument could have. Presence, then, is not arrogance. It is not about towering over others or dominating with volume. It is about alignment, living so rooted in self-respect that your body naturally communicates it. Your stance, your eye contact, your pace, even your silence all become an armor that toxic people cannot pierce. So how do you cultivate this presence? Begin with the inside. Thoughts of fear will dye your soul with hesitation, and hesitation will show in your posture. But thoughts of calm, discipline, and clarity will dye your soul with steadiness, and that steadiness will radiate outward. Practice standing tall, walking slowly, meeting eyes directly but without aggression. Hold your face in calm neutrality, even when the storm rises inside. These small disciplines, repeated daily, form a presence that speaks before you ever open your mouth. Because here is the truth. The world listens more to how you carry yourself than to what you say. And toxic people, who are always searching for leverage, cannot manipulate someone who radiates calm confidence. They may try, but their words bounce off a wall they cannot scale. Your presence is your first boundary. It is the fortress gate before the enemy even reaches the wall. When you walk into a room with calm dignity, you declare silently, "I am not easily moved. I do not hand my worth to anyone. I carry myself, and that is enough." And that silent declaration may be the most powerful message you ever send. Do you want to carry such presence, power without words, respect without demand? Then stay with this journey. Stay with true Stoic way, where we walk together in cultivating unshakable presence. In a world that glorifies noise, silence often feels like weakness. People tell you to clap back, to defend yourself, to dominate arguments with sharper words. But the Stoics knew a deeper truth. Silence is not surrender, it is strength. It is not emptiness, it is mastery. Silence is the ultimate weapon because it cannot be twisted, cannot be provoked, cannot be defeated. Seneca captured this power when he wrote, "A great man is indifferent to insult as to praise." Why? Because both insults and praise are chains when they control you. If insults can make you angry and praise can make you dependent, then your peace is always in someone else's hands. But in silence, you are free from both. Toxic people crave one thing above all: reaction. They poke, they provoke, they sting with words. Not to seek truth, but to feed on your response. Anger is their oxygen. Defensiveness is their victory. When you withhold both, you suffocate their fire. The flame dies, not because you crushed it, but because you refuse to feed it. I recall a moment when a coworker hurled sharp words at me in front of others, hoping to see me flinch. In the past, I would have jumped in, defended myself, explained, tried to clear the record. But that day, I met his eyes steadily and said nothing. The silence stretched heavy in the room. He shifted in his seat, stumbled in his next sentence, and suddenly everyone could see who was truly in control. My silence exposed his weakness far more than my words ever could. That is the paradox. Silence often says more than speech. It says, "You do not control me." It says, "My energy is mine, and I will not waste it here." It says, "Your noise cannot breach my fortress." And because silence cannot be twisted, it unsettles the aggressor. They expect anger, defense, explanation, but they meet stillness. And that stillness reflects their own frustration back at them like a mirror. Silence is not passive, it is active self-command. It is choosing your battlefield. Words can be twisted, but silence cannot. Arguments can be dragged endlessly, but silence ends them quickly. In silence, you do not lose ground, you claim it. Think of silence as armor. Words spoken in haste are arrows that can pierce your own dignity, wounding you long after the moment has passed. But silence shields you. It does not mean you feel nothing. It means you master the space between feeling and action. It means you can carry the storm inside without letting it spill outside. That is strength, quiet, unshakable strength. And silence is strategy. Toxic people script their attacks expecting chaos. They expect raised voices, defensive tones, frantic explanations. When met with silence, the script collapses. They are thrown off balance because silence cannot be baited, cannot be used against you. But silence is not only for moments of conflict, it is also a way of life. To speak less, but with more weight. To listen, not for the sake of replying, but for the sake of understanding. To value your words as currency, spending them only where they create value. In a world that spends endlessly on noise, silence becomes rare, and in its rarity, it becomes powerful. Ask yourself, how many times have you walked away from an argument replaying every word you wish you hadn't said? How many nights have you lost to the echo of conversations you should have ended sooner? Silence robs those echoes of their power. When you refuse to speak in anger, you leave nothing behind to regret. You walk away lighter, freer. This is why silence is a weapon, not of destruction, but of protection. It protects your dignity from being cheapened, your energy from being drained, your peace from being disturbed. And the more you practice it, the heavier it becomes. At first, silence feels uncomfortable. The room expects a response, and you feel the pull to fill the void. But over time, that void becomes your strength. You realize that the person who does not need to speak already holds the highest ground. Of course, silence does not mean letting people walk over you. It does not mean never speaking truth. It means choosing when and how to speak. It means refusing to dance for every invitation to battle. Marcus Aurelius said, "You always own the option of having no opinion." That is the essence of silence, the freedom to walk away from noise, to keep your dignity intact, to save your words for places that matter. So the next time someone provokes you, remember, the silence you hold will unsettle them more than the speech you deliver. It will show them that their power was always an illusion, and it will remind you that your peace belongs only to you. If you believe silence is strength, leave one word in the comments: silence. Let it be your declaration that you will no longer waste energy on noise. Picture yourself holding a clay jug filled with water. Each day you pour a little out, into your work, your relationships, your passions, your responsibilities. But the jug is not bottomless. Every drop spent brings it closer to empty. If you are careless, others will line up with empty cups, demanding more. Some will sip respectfully. Others will drain it without gratitude, leaving you with nothing but dust. Your time and energy are that jug. They are finite. They are precious. And yet most people guard their money more carefully than they guard their time. Seneca warned us of this centuries ago. People are frugal in guarding their personal property, but as soon as it comes to squandering time, they are most wasteful of the one thing in which it is right to be stingy. Think about it. If someone reached into your pocket and took your wallet, you would resist. You would demand it back. But when someone takes hours of your time, through pointless arguments, endless demands, manipulative games, you give it away freely. You tell yourself it's kindness, but in truth, it's poverty. The worst kind. Because it leaves you bankrupt of the one resource you can never replace. I once knew a man who lived like this. He never missed a call, never refused an invitation, never said no. Every time a toxic friend demanded attention, he gave it. Every time a relative insisted on his presence, he showed up. By the end of each week, he was drained, not from his own work, but from carrying the weight of others. He thought he was practicing generosity. In reality, he was practicing surrender. Over the years, he grew bitter. His energy was gone, his peace stolen, his spark dimmed. And yet, he kept saying yes. He believed that refusal was cruelty. Until one day, exhaustion forced him to change. He began experimenting with a different answer. No. At first, people were shocked. They complained. They accused him of being distant. But over time, something miraculous happened. The people who valued him stayed. The ones who only used him drifted away. And in their absence, he found something priceless: his strength. Guarding your energy does not mean cutting everyone off. It means becoming deliberate. Not every argument deserves your voice. Not every message requires your reply. Not every presence deserves your presence. By choosing carefully, you preserve yourself for the people and the causes that truly matter. Think of yourself as a fortress with limited supplies. Would you open your gates to every passerby, feeding them until your stores are gone? Or would you ration wisely, keeping enough for those within? Toxic people disguise themselves as guests, but they are raiders. They come smiling, but they leave with your provisions. Without vigilance, you will discover too late that you are empty. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily. Do not waste the remainder of your life in thoughts about others, when you do not refer your thoughts to some object of common utility. In modern words, don't squander your mind on people who do not build you. Every minute you replay their insults, you grant them free rent in the only house that matters, your mind. Evict them. Keep that space for clarity, strength, and stillness. Of course, toxic people will resist when you begin to guard your jug. They will call you selfish, arrogant, cold. Let them. Their outrage reveals their dependence. They were not drawn to you for who you are, but for what they could take. When the taking stops, so does their loyalty. Better to lose false companions than to lose yourself. Guarding your energy also means guarding your digital gates. Every scroll, every click, every conversation you allow into your life is an opening. Some voices water your spirit, others poison it. You do not owe everyone constant access. Muting, unfollowing, even closing the door entirely is not hostility, it is self-respect. And when guilt whispers, remember this: saying no to them is saying yes to yourself. Saying no to their chaos is saying yes to your peace. Saying no to their demands is saying yes to your growth. Each refusal is not a loss. It is a victory. Your jug of water is finite. Do not let every thirsty hand drain it. Save it for the soil that will grow. for the people who honor it, for the life you are building with intention. Because here is the reality. The richest you will ever be is when you stop wasting your time and energy on those who only take. The poorest you will ever feel is when you give it away to those who do not deserve it. Guard it, protect it, respect it. Guard your energy. Do not let others waste it. Subscribe to True Stoic Way and learn how to build inner strength that no one can drain. Imagine a warrior standing at the gates of his city. His armor is dented from battle, his sword worn from years of defense. Storms have slammed against the walls, enemies have besieged the gates, betrayal has come from within. Yet he still stands, not because the walls around him are perfect, but because the wall within him remains unbroken. That wall is self-respect. Without it, every other defense crumbles. With it, nothing can breach him. Self-respect is the final wall, the last line of defense. Calmness can falter if you forget its purpose. Boundaries can bend if you lose clarity. Silence can waver if you seek validation. Distance can collapse if you crave approval. Presence can fade if you doubt yourself. But self-respect, the unshakable conviction that your dignity is not negotiable, holds everything together. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "It is not death that a man should fear, but never beginning to live." What does it mean to live? It means to live by your own measure of worth, not by the borrowed scales of others. It means to rise each day guided by your principles, not chained to the approval of toxic people. To hand over your self-respect is not living, it is servitude. True life begins the moment you declare, "I do not need your permission to exist as myself." I once witnessed this truth in a woman at a family dinner. For years, her relatives criticized her choices, her career, her relationships, even her appearance. She would defend herself, argue, explain, hoping one day they might nod in approval. But the more she explained, the more they pressed. The table had become her courtroom, and she the defendant. Until one evening, everything changed. As the criticism began again, she simply set down her fork, looked around the table, and said with calm clarity, "This is my life. I am at peace with it." No anger, no defense, no pleading, just truth, spoken without apology. The conversation ended there. For the first time, she ate in silence, not defeated, but free. That is the power of self-respect. It ends the trial before it begins. It silences the critics, not because they agree, but because their power to judge no longer matters. And in that silence, you discover a freedom deeper than approval. The freedom of being untouchable. Self-respect is the culmination of every Stoic shield. Calmness teaches you not to hand over your peace. Boundaries teach you to protect what is sacred. Silence teaches you to master the urge to justify. Distance teaches you to control access to your energy. Presence teaches you to embody strength without words. But self-respect is what binds them all. It is the fortress wall that cannot be shaken because it does not depend on anything external. It is your declaration to the world. I will not shrink for you. I will not betray myself for you. I will not hand over my worth for scraps of approval. Toxic people crave control. They crave your reactions, your time, your explanations, your submission. And the poorer you become when you keep feeding that hunger. The richest you will ever be is when you no longer crave their acceptance. That is self-respect, wealth that cannot be stolen. The final truth is simple. They may try to shrink you, but only you can bow. The moment you stop agreeing, you grow beyond their reach. You become larger than their insults, steadier than their schemes, freer than their grip. And this is where the Stoic path leads. Not to arrogance, not to domination, but to alignment. To live with dignity is to live in harmony with what the Stoics taught, that your mind, your will, and your respect for yourself are yours alone to command. So when you next face mockery, slander, or contempt, remember the warrior at the gates. Remember the woman at the family table. Remember Marcus Aurelius's reminder that life truly begins only when you live by your own worth. And remember that every time you stand tall in your self-respect, you not only protect yourself from others, you also prove to yourself that you are free. Do not wait for permission. Do not beg for peace. Do not shrink to fit into the smallness of others. Hold your head high, carry your calmness, guard your boundaries, wield your silence, practice your distance, walk with your presence. And when all else falters, let your self-respect be the wall that nothing can breach. Because the truth is this: respect yourself, and you will not need to demand respect from others. Guard your peace, and you will not need to beg for peace from the world. Live with dignity, and even in the presence of poison, your spirit will remain untouchable. If you want to build a fortress of self-respect that nothing can shake, join us in the community of True Stoic Way. Subscribe, comment, stand tall, and together, we will hold our dignity like a shield no storm can break. At the end of all these lessons, one truth shines brighter than the rest. No one can decide your worth but you. Toxic people may mock, belittle, or test you. They may try to drag you into arguments, lure you into endless explanations, or drain you of time and energy. But in the end, their power is not real. It is borrowed, and it can only exist if you hand it to them. You alone decide whether to shrink or to stand tall. You alone decide whether their contempt becomes your chain or whether your composure becomes your shield. Life will always bring storms, criticism, betrayal, misunderstanding. But the question is never about the storm. The question is about you. Will you bend or will you rise? Marcus Aurelius reminded us that it is not death we should fear, but never beginning to live. And living begins the moment you live by your own measure of dignity. Calmness, boundaries, silence, distance, presence. All of these are shields forged by Stoicism. But they are only complete when anchored in self-respect, the final wall that no storm can breach. Think of the warrior once more, standing at the gates. His armor is dented, his sword worn, but he still stands. Not because the world around him is safe, but because the world within him is steady. That is the gift of Stoicism. It does not promise that storms will stop. It teaches you to become the kind of person no storm can break. So as you walk back into the world, into offices, homes, streets, gatherings, remember this: every encounter is a choice. You cannot stop people from testing you, but you can stop agreeing to play their game. You cannot silence every insult, but you can choose not to let it pierce you. You cannot erase every storm, but you can carry yourself like the fortress that endures. The final message is simple, but it must echo through your life. Stand tall. Keep rising. Your dignity is the shield no storm can break. And if these truths speak to you, do not let them stay within you alone. Share them. Spread them. Practice them. Because the more we live with Stoic strength, the more we create a world where dignity cannot be stolen by noise. Subscribe to True Stoic Way, like this message, and share it with those who need to hear it. Together we rise stronger. Together we hold our ground. Together we keep building the shield no storm can break.